Now we'll talk about functions. Okay, so we have been using functions, right? Like print, okay, type, and all loads of functions we've been doing, right? These are called inbuilt function. Inbuilt function means the definition is predefined and we are just calling them. Now we're going to learn to make our own functions. How do we make our own functions? So typically what is a function? It is nothing but it's a name that we give to a block of code. Okay, so let's say I define a function called def and I say my fun1, okay, bracket open and close colon. So this is the syntax, okay, rule of creating functions. So you define, you need to define, so you need to say def. Def is to define the function, okay. So it always starts with def, okay. Def is short form for definition, okay. So you are defining a function definition. That's what it means. Now, after def, you give the name that you want to give, okay. It is totally up to you what you need to give. Just like a variable, you need to be careful about giving name, okay. You should not use inbuilt function name or inbuilt commands which have a predefined meaning, okay. Like do not give print as name to your function because there's already a print function. So if you give print name here, okay, the inbuilt print will stop working, okay. Whichever is nearest is called, right? So this print is in this file, right? So this print function will be called. So the inbuilt print function will not be you'll not be able to call it, okay. So you have def my function one, and then function, after function name you need to give bracket open and close, okay, and then colon, and then you hit enter. Now this is the block of your function block, and you can define whatever you want to do here, okay. So I want to write, let's say, print how are you, okay, how's going, whatever you want to give, right? So it's basically you can write hundreds of lines of code here, but generally function will not be that long. But where are you? Okay, let's say we give these three block of code, okay, under function my fun1. Okay, so what I have done, we created three lines or three statements, okay, Python code, 3 lines of Python code, and we have put it under function called my fun1. So it is under my fun1. Okay, so next time onwards, what we have to do is we just have to call, okay, we just have to call what? My fun1. Okay, so when you run it, this is not going to execute because this is just the definition. Okay, okay, when you call, print is not called automatically, right? We have to call print. Type is not called automatically, we have to call type, isn't it? Similarly, my fun1 is the definition, so definition is there, but it doesn't mean that it will execute. You have to specifically call it. Okay, it's like we have all our names, right? But doesn't mean that giving name means you're calling. We have to call by name, then only we'll respond, correct? So now if you want your function to respond, you say my fun1, okay, and when you run it, what happened? My fun1
It
is
get
called.
executed.
Yes, all the lines of code got executed. So in a crude way, okay, function is nothing but collection of block of code, and this block of code, okay, generally are supposed to work together to perform certain action, right? So when you talk about print function as such, print has block of code which are put together to perform certain action, which is to print the content on the screen. Okay, so maybe you can call it a my questions, right? So my questions or something. So whenever you call my questions, these questions will be asked, right? So it helps in simplifying the code. Basically, these questions are given a name, so you don't have to put these lines every time when you like imagine if print did not existed. Okay, instead of print, we had to write, let's say, 4 lines of code. So here it is so simple, right? Print and print, print, right? But if print function was not there, we would have had to write 4 lines of code to print how are you. Okay, it doesn't matter how complex or easy, you would have learned to do print by yourself, right? But then to write here, I'm writing 3 print statement. This would have become a 12-line code. So you are doing code reusability. That means function is defined with 4 line only somewhere, right? But when we call this, it performs that job of print. Okay, and it saves our time. Okay, it saves our time. It saves our space, like number of characters that we have to type. Okay, it makes easy, right? Your code you're able to reuse the same code. So one more thing that we have to learn about functions is that you have to make it as generic as possible, as generic as possible. Okay, because if you do not make as generic as possible, the usability will come down. So let's take example of print only. Now, by default, print prints in different line, correct? So there is a new line, right? But it also gives you option to print in same line, right? If I say end equal to, okay, so it gives you an option to print in same line, right? So what is happening is, so by using this, print has become more generic. If print did not had this, okay, print said no, I will not give you, and you have to print in different line. So in cases where you have to print in same line, remember the star pattern we printed and we needed to print it in the same line. Okay, so what happened was then you couldn't have used print. You would have had to do something else to do it, right? So remember, when you are creating function, you have to make it so generic so that many people can use it. So generally your print function will not have print inside itself. Okay, it will not have print. It will, because maybe sometimes you may want to print, sometimes you may not want to print, right? So if you give print, let's say addition of 2 number. So when you add 2 number, okay, and if it prints the output there in the function, okay, let me show you. Let's say I'm defining a function called myAdd, okay, and I'm saying n1 equal to 5, n2 equal to 10, and I'm saying print, sorry, sum is n1 plus n2. Now in this case, okay, this myAdd is not generic for 2 reasons, because the n1 and n2 value you are taking, okay, let's say instead of giving 5, you take int of input. Okay, even then it is not generic. Why? Because you're working on something, and n1 and n2, you don't want to get from user. You already have it from some other calculation. You have done some calculation and you have got n1 and n2. Okay, now you want to add 2 numbers. Now because this myAdd asks the user to input 2 new values, you cannot use that, right? So instead, instead, if you remove this and just make sure that it performs addition, okay, it is good for us to use it, and we'll see how we can do that. But did you understand what I'm trying to say here? Okay, see, n1, n2, in this case, okay, this myAdd is taking from the user, right? But there could be some situation, okay, maybe 50 times you want to take it from the user, but rest 50% of the time you are getting these values from somewhere else. You're calculating and getting n1, n2, and now that calculated part you want to add at the end, right? So then this myAdd will not find usage in 50% of the cases. 50% of cases where you are getting the value, yes. 50% cases where you are, uh, you know, where you are generating value from some other way, you won't be able to use it, right? Similarly, you don't want to print the final result because sum is not your final result. Again, you want to put that in some other calculation. So again, printing is not, doesn't make sense, right? So this function is not generic. Okay, to make it generic, what you can do is you can ask this my add to give values to you. Okay, what does that mean? So when I say my add, okay, and we pass parameter, okay. So for example, if you are doing list.append, right? So we added a value there, right? So this is called passing the parameter, passing the parameter to the function definition. Okay, we are passing value. We are passing the values are called parameters. Okay, so when you call a function, you pass parameter to that function, and when you are defining the function, you need to have a mechanism to catch it. These are called arguments. So in a way, parameters and arguments are same, just that the where it is used, based on that we call it them parameter or argument. If you call them in function definition, it's called argument, and when you pass the value to the function definition, it's called parameter. Okay, so this is parameter. 55 is parameter. When we said list1 dot append 55, you want to add 55 to the list, so that 55 becomes parameter. Okay, and we are calling the function or method, in that case method append. So here there has to be mechanism to catch the coming in value. So a is a variable which will catch your 55. So within this simple bracket, earlier we were not using it because we didn't need to catch any value, but now I want to catch a value. So I will say a, print, my add a, and then I'm going to say here print. Okay, we'll just show you. Okay, and then I'll change it, and then I say a. Okay, so now when you say my add 55, what happens? 55 goes to a. A will take 55, and when you print a, you get 55. Okay, now I want to add two numbers, isn't it? So in my add, I will pass 55 and 65, let's say. So 55 and 65 are generated values from somewhere. Okay, now it can be generated or you can read it in the main program. Only you can read it from the user. You don't have to have my add to ask for the user. So you read the value, okay, and then you pass it on to my add. So here I'll say AB. So again, it does what is called as left to right mapping. Left to right mapping means A will take the first value, leftmost will take the leftmost value, rightmost will take the rightmost value. So A gets 55, 65 goes to B. So I can copy this here and paste here. I can put B, and here let me put B. So this is how you can pass parameter or values to a function. Okay. Now, after doing, let's say I do sum equal to A plus B. Now I want to pass this sum back to, now I don't want to print it, but I want to give the result back. I want to give the result back. Okay. So you say return sum. Okay. So function with arguments means this. Okay. It will take some argument, one or two or multiple. We'll see later how we can give infinite number, not infinite, but variable number of arguments. Then you can return the calculated value back to where it is getting called. This is where it is getting called. So we need to send it back to this. So now if this is sending it back here, you need to have a mechanism to catch it, isn't it? So you will say result or output or whatever variable equal to. So this is a variable, this is a function. How do you know this is a function? This has square, this has a simple bracket. And the bracket you are passing 55, 65. So these two values goes to my add, and it gets added and goes to result. Yes, and you can print result here. Okay, so result is 120. Now, if this, sorry, if you do not have return, let's say, okay, not every function has to have return, not every function has to have you know, arguments. So if you remember, yesterday we did pop item, right? Or yesterday or day before in dictionary. Okay, so then what did we do? We had pop item. Pop item would not take any argument, right? It would delete the last added value automatically, right? In dictionary. So that's what, okay, so not all function might need, okay? It knows what is the last value and it will delete the last value. You don't have to tell which value, but pop, you need to give the value or key that you want to delete it. Make sense? Okay. And return, not all function will give you return. So in this case, I'm commenting the return. Now when I say print here, you get none. Okay, none indicates there's nothing to return. The function is not returning. Okay, so function has done its job, but it's not returning. Okay, so yes, we will try to implement these now. Any questions so far?
No.
Sure. Okay. 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 So this is a simple definition of, this is a simple definition of your function. Okay, this is how you define. So for function, you need to define the function. Okay, then you have to call the function later.
Yes.
Okay, right. So this is it. Now we'll talk in terms of types of different functions here. Different function. What are different types? Okay. So what I said here is you have A and B, right? Now A and B, okay, A will take first value, B will take second value. These are called positional. Positional because position is fixed. A is first value, leftmost value, first value. So obviously A will take first, right? Then you have B. Okay, B will take second value, right? A takes first value, B takes second value, right? So the position is fixed, isn't it? Correct? So these are called positional. Now let's say I don't give 65. I delete 65. Then what happens? You see, it says missing one required positional argument B. So keywords here are required and positional. Positional, you understood? Okay, B because B first value leftmost goes to A. So it is not able to find value for B. It says that I'm not able to find your equivalent value for B. Correct? So this is fine. And what is required? Required means when you have these two values, you have to give two parameters here. Two arguments will have two parameters. Okay, this is called required positional argument. Required means you have to give two. At the same time, it has to be in same order. A, B, B. A, B, B. Understood? That's why we say required positional argument. Okay. Required means the two arguments, so you have to pass two parameters. And it has to be in same order. Okay. So if I change 65 to the left, 55 to the right, A will become 65, B will become 55, isn't it? Okay. So now A takes 55, B takes 65. Okay. So this is example of required positional argument. Now we will see how to remove the required condition. Okay. How to remove the required condition. So here let me define it again. It's called default arguments. Okay. Default argument. Okay. I'm going to take same example. Okay. And I have to change the name, right? So I'll change the name to my add1 or maybe my add2. Here I'm saying b equal to 10. Now when I say b equal to 10, what does that mean? It means, okay, it means b has a default value. Okay, so this is no longer required. This has become default. Okay, so now, sorry, a is required. Okay, b has default. So b is not required in this case. Okay, if I do not give, okay, let me call this function my add. My add2, and I do not give value to b, and I call it. So what happens? A is 55 because I'm giving value to A here 55 and B is 10. Okay, still positional because you cannot, I cannot give value to B without giving value to A. If I give a value here 65 or let's say 35, then B will get 35 and A will get 55. Okay, only in case B does not get any value, okay, you have your own value. It's like, you know, carrying your own tiffin box, right? If you don't get lunch, you can open your box and eat it. You'll not stay hungry. So, you know, B is carrying its own box, lunch box, right? If you give lunch, fine, B will eat. Otherwise, B will open and eat whatever it has, default value, right? So again, situations where let's say, you know, I think we discussed this in SQL also, right? The default values, right? Same concept here. You know, let's say you want to add a location to your employee, right? And bulk of your employees, let's say 70% employees sit in one location. So you can say default location equal to that 70%. So if the location is different, you provide it. Otherwise, don't provide. If you don't provide, default value will be taken and, okay, the calculation will be performed. Okay. Now, can I make A default and B also default? Of course, yes, you can make. Doesn't matter, right? So in this case, if you call 55 and 35, you get 55 and 35. Okay. If you call only 55, so A will get 55, B will get 10, right? And if you do not call anything, then both A and B will get default values. A gets 5, B gets 10. Correct? So it's all possible. But can I have A default and B non-default, B required? So opposite of default is required, right? So can I have B default? No, you cannot. Why? Because see, B is mandatory, so you have to give value for B, and B takes the second value, right? B takes the second value from left. So can you have second value without first value? Can you have first value, second value without first value?
No, we can't.
You can't, right? So if I have to give value for B, I have to give a value for A also. I cannot say, okay, this, let's say this one, okay? So let's say I'm calling this one. I cannot say that, 5 is second. How can 5 be second? 5 is first value only. If I give 10 only, 10 is second value, correct? So 10 will go to B and 5 will go to A. So there is no point of making A default. Okay, so you cannot have default values on the left and mandatory required values on the right. All the required will be on the left and default will be on the right. So if you had 3 values or 4 values or 5 values, okay, all of these must be, can be, right? Not must be, can be default. Okay. Okay. In case you want to make A and B. So in this case, A and B is required, CD is default. Okay. I cannot put CD on left of AB. Okay. All required will be on the left so that when you assign values, they go to the required ones, not to the default ones. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. When you run it, this itself will give you error. See that? Okay. Let's run and see. Okay. Non-default argument follows default argument. So this is non-default argument and this is default argument. So it's saying non-default argument follows default argument. No, it should precede, not follow. Okay. So you can give 0. Right? So in this case, if you run, you get. So here both A and B takes the default values. Okay. Great. So what we have seen so far, we have seen the required arguments, okay, where you have to pass values. We have seen default arguments where you don't need to pass because they have their own default values and they have to define default values, right? Okay. Now, okay. Now, so we have seen opposite of required is default. But what is opposite of positional? Now we'll see how to handle position. Position also should not be important. So opposite of positional is called keyword arguments. Okay. So it's keyword parameters actually. Okay. Keyword, kind of removes the restriction of positional. Okay. The difference is when you give default, you give equal to here in arguments. But when you make keyword, we actually give values in calling. So for example, we'll call my ad only. My ad is there. Yeah. Okay, here my ad, right? Now, here if I run, obviously your A will be 55 and B will be 65, right? A 55. Now, I have to use the same variable names, arguments name, A comma B. Okay, in inbuilt functions, and when we do some of those advanced analysis in plotting and all, we'll see. Okay, your function will have multiple arguments, right? If you draw a histogram, okay, you'll have variables to do the X label, Y label, the header, subheader, all those things. Now, if you start building a histogram, okay, and if you have 20 such variables, you have to pass 20 such variables, not possible. And also order, not possible to remember the order also, right? So if you want, so first thing is that default one we know. So most of the values we have default values there. So if we don't give title, it will have blank. Okay, so most of the values will have default. Only 2 values are mandatory there, the X and Y values. Okay, what should be on X axis, what should be on Y axis. So that plot can be drawn. Everything else has default. So if you give, it will take what you give. If you do not give, it will have default values to do it. Now again, let's say, you have 20 values and you don't want to give first 10, but you want to give value for 11th parameter. Okay, can you go to 11th without giving values to 1 to 10? No, you have to give, dummy value to 1 to 10 before you reach out to 11th parameter. Okay, that becomes difficult. So that's why you have option for keyword arguments. Keyword says, okay, I want to give b equal to 5 and a equal to 6. The 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 variable name that you are using here has to match that you have here. Okay, so you need to go and see the function definition. Okay, and function definition will tell you the arguments. Okay, so you need to have this like this. Now it knows that. Now see, again, I can define a here as 5 and b here as say 6, for example. Now see, the scope of this variable is global. This is out in the main program. And this AB has a scope of local. That means this AB is inside this function. So there's no connection between this one and this one. Okay. So assume it like this. This is movies that is being played in a theater, and these are movies that you are playing in your house. So there's no connection. This is with this has a scope limited to this function, and we'll talk about it next. Okay, this about the scope. But understand this AB has a scope only here, and this AB has a scope of the global, right? So, but there's no connection between this AB and this AB. Okay, they are different. So if it doesn't, if I say B comma A, that doesn't matter. Okay, B is what 6. 6 will go to A. So when you run it, you'll see A has 6 because 6 is what you are passing. Okay, because they are different, even though name is same, but they are different. Doesn't mean they are same. Okay, but to make it keyword, you have to use equal to, and the values that is there as arguments in the function, that should be on the left of the equal to. Now here if I say b equal to b and a equal to a, okay, they left side a is different, right side a is different. They are not same. So I'm saying left side b, which is part of your function, should take the variable b value, right? And you can, so now you get here, because a is taking this value here. Okay, so a is 5. Earlier it was taking 6 and 5, correct? Because it was following the traditional rule, that is leftmost will go to leftmost, rightmost will go to rightmost. But now I'm saying left side is the argument name that is defined in the function definition. Okay, so I'm saying b equal to b. So say okay, b means the second value, second argument here, and b is what 6. So it will take 6. Now you are kind of not being positional, right? Okay, we are doing keyword argument. Understood? Now I'll keep quiet for next 30 seconds. I want you to just revise the 4 terms that we have discussed. Keyword, okay, keyword, positional, default, and required. Okay, so let me put them here. So first we did required, right? Required, then we did positional, then we did default, and then we did keyword. Just try to remember these 4 words, and after 30 seconds, you ask me if you have any questions. Okay. Any question on what we have done so far? All good? We'll do, I know it's becoming a little heavy, so I'll do one more concept and we will end the day. Okay. Is it fine, everyone?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So we spoke about the global and local scope, right? Let me remove this from here and I will put it here. Okay. So let's say I put I have defined a function, my test or something. Okay. And I say here a equal to 5, print a. Okay. And I'll say here inside my test 1, a equal to a. Okay. And here I say a equal to 10. I say print a, right? So here I'll say printing in main 1 main a equal to you say a. Okay. So now what happens? Normal, right? And I'll call my test. Okay. Now when you run it, okay. So printing in main. Okay. This is okay. So when you have function, right? This is definition. So first line that is called is line number 5. First line that is called is line number 5. So 5 is okay. So 5 is called and 5 becomes 10. Then printing in main, then my test. And my test will take you to here, then execute 2 and 3 and comes back to 7. 7 will take you to the 1 and comes back to 7 only. Then you go to 8. So that's why, printing in main a equal to a is printed first and then it goes to inside this my test and prints a equal to 5 because I have value 5 here. So this is called local variable. Okay, this is called local variable and this is called global variable. Okay, why global variable? Because this is in main and can be used anywhere. This is called local because the scope is limited to this function. Outside this function nobody knows who a is. But this A, everybody knows who this A is, right? But always local takes preference over global. Okay. Always local takes preference over global. Okay. So remember this. Now let's say, okay, this is clear. Now what I do, I comment this. I don't have local A. And then when you run it, see, it is printing 10 here. Okay, how? Because this is the first line that is called, isn't it? So A is 10, printing, and then my test. So by the time my test is called, we already defined A equal to 10. So it does not have a local variable. It does not have a local variable. So it is taking the value of the global variable. But in case you give a local variable always takes preference over global. So you'll get 5. Now let's say comment out this, and then I cut this. Okay, I move from here till here. Now my test is called before A is assigned 10. Obviously this will also give error. So let me comment it out. Now you run this. So see, since I'm defining A after calling the test, right? So it's not able to find the value of A, right? Value of A is not yet defined when this function is called, right? It's looking for just like same error, that just the way this is giving error saying A is not defined, even this is saying A is not defined. Okay, so I have to define A before, right? So that both this and that can print it. Okay, okay, so this is easy to understand. Now let's say I say A equal to 5, okay, and I will take this here and I'll paste here and I'll say my test 2 here. Okay, so what I have done, I'm printing A before A is equal to 5. Okay, before A equal to 5, I'm defining this. Now when I run, what will happen? Any guesses?
It will become 10. The my test 2 will become 10 and my test 1 will become 5.
Is it? Let's run it and see. Read the error and explain to me the error. It's very easy to explain, right?
A is like we have given before local variable, it's saying.
Yeah. So, okay, I like to give this bad example. Okay. So let's say, let's say you don't have a dog as a pet and your neighbor has dog as a pet. Now you tell your family member, whoever, husband, wife, kid, that, um, get dog, get that dog, right? Now, since you do not have, okay, when you say get that dog, okay, or whatever name is Tommy, okay, can you get Tommy? Or can you get A? In this case, can you get A? So since when it was not there here, okay, your relative, your family member knows, okay, Tommy is the neighbor's dog. So, by default, you mean neighbor's dog only, right? Nearest person, nearest dog. So that person will go and get Tommy for you, right? But let's say you say that, no, we are also planning to buy, another, we are planning to buy Tommy, right? We'll buy a dog, a pet dog, we'll also call Tommy, right? So now, so you have said it. That means you have not bought it yet. You want to buy it in future. But now if you tell your family member, get Tommy, Tommy will say, no, Tommy is not yet come, right? You have to buy first to get the Tommy. You have not bought it, right? This is what happens generally, right? If you say that I'm going to buy, so your family, oh, have you already bought Tommy, right? So earlier when we do not define A equal to 5, it was all fine, okay? It's all fine because, it is your neighbor's dog. But when you promise that I'm going to buy, and if you are going to refer it before you buy, they'll have doubt. Oh, have you already bought it? Something like this. Okay. It says, you're referencing it before assignment. You're calling Tommy before you bought it. So it says, no, 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 no. I mean, neighbor's dog. Okay. So that means till here you mean neighbor's dog. That's what you're saying. Okay. No, no, no. I don't mean mine. We mean the neighbor's Tommy. Okay. Then you say global A. Global A indicates that you want to use global A till you get a local variable. Now, earlier, when we were not using local, you didn't have to define global A because default meaning of A is global only. Okay. But when you have local, then it means that it has to be local, or if you want to use both global and local, you have to say global A. I'm not doing the value. Okay. It's saying global. Use A is global. So whatever value you have, you use it. Okay. Now, after you define it, then you cannot say global A. I cannot say print global A here. Okay, it's already giving error, right? Once you have your own, you cannot use global. You can use global until you buy your own. Okay, it's very clear. Local will always have preference over global. Okay, there's no way you can change it. But you can use global in function, and you can use global up till when you actually start using or defining your own local variable. But after you define your local, you cannot have access to the global variable. Okay. Now, see, you'll say, why do you have to define A every time? You can define X, B, or C, whatever, right? Yes, when you are programming, it's fine, but you need to understand how it works. Maybe by mistake you define and you expect something else and you get something else as output, right? So that's why it's also important to understand these things. Yes. Understood? So this is called local versus global scope of variable. Okay. Global and local scope of variable. And this comes when you are using same variable names, right? Okay, so we'll stop here.